Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Stanley number 342. This is a pivot set in a US3 finish. Stanley has a decent offering of what they call wardrobe pivots. They're pivot hardware that will work on doors that are thin, up to 1 3/4 thick, with limitations. Not every door, not every pivot style will do every door thickness. And when they come to calling them wardrobe pivots, it's, in my experience, generally the applications, I should say, that call out for this hardware is simply doors in a master closet, in a bedroom, in a residential application where you are literally hanging doors, or for your clothing closet, your wardrobe closets is what it is. So I think the term wardrobe is a word applied to this type of hardware. It very likely harkens back to several decades, if not well over a century, in terms of the use of the word to describe this type of pivot hardware. Okay, the hardware industry is really rampant with naming things, and thankfully so, that make it easy to remember. Oh, I need a wardrobe pivot. Okay, well you're talking about a type of pivot. Some people might think Stanley, but it's very clear what you intend. I want pivot hardware. I want it for a wardrobe application. So don't show me anything that's not appropriate, like a knife hinge, or like heavy-duty pivots that will handle 200, 300, 400,000 pound, 2,000 or 3,000 pound doors. The term helps us really understand what the ultimate application is going to be. Let's do a visual tour of the material. There is nothing handed about this at all. So these two pieces that well, is that true? Yeah, that's completely true. There's nothing handed about this hardware whatsoever. So you're going to get an upper and a lower pivot set. Okay. You can use them like this. You can use them like this. Left-hand reverse, right-hand reverse doors, whatever the case might be. Nothing handed about these whatsoever. The reason is why they're not handed is because, well, they're certainly symmetrical, but also there's no removing of the bottom door portion or the top door portion to do the installation. When you attach this material to the door, you're going to have it in place in the opening, and then you are going to secure it to the stop that you've added or applied to the frame. So nothing handed about this at all. And indeed, the first line of the installation instructions, tell us. The second line, the 342 is reversible, non-handed. Left-hand installation is opposite of the right hand that's being shown. The 342 is for an overlay application. In the world of Stanley, you have either flush or also inset, or you have overlay. The door is going to fit into the opening, or the door is going to be larger than the opening and sit outside of it. There are 3 links below this video: cut sheet, product catalog, installation instructions. Installation instructions are included with the hardware, and we're going to go over that shortly. Let's look at the cut sheet. That is a simple, straightforward document, and the cut sheet it comes out of the product catalog. What the cut sheet shows us are the dimensional sizes of the unit, so that you have an understanding of how large the hardware is. Let's take a look at that. They say that the jamb leaf is 3 inch tall. I would say that that would be accurate. That it is 7/8 wide. Correct. The door leaf is 2.5 inch wide. The overall height is 1 1/8. Okay. this is going to have a point of 2 7/16 from the back end to the vertical to the from the back end to the, that must be 2 1/16. Oh, it indeed it is. So 2 1/16 from the back of the unit to the vertical axis of pivoting. Okay, so what I'm saying is, from where this is going to mount to the vertical axis of pivoting is 2 1/16. They're saying that this is going to be used on doors up to 1 3/8 thick. So in that area where your door is going to reside, yeah, indeed, you're going to be at 1 3/8 as a maximum thickness. You're certainly not going to want to touch that pivot point at all. You don't want to work on that getting loose as your door opens over time, or gouging the door. This is for doors from 1 1/8 to 1 3/8. Could you put something thinner on there? Yeah, I don't see why you can't. You're just going to have a lot of hardware hanging out. If you were to go with something 3/4 thick, you know, you're going to have a lot of hardware hanging out there. Okay. That covers the dimensional properties. It also shows us a cross-section of what the door would look like installed. Okay. I do see them installed on the floor, if the floor condition would account for that, but they are shown held off the floor. It is shown held off the floor. For overlay doors, when we get to the installation instructions, we'll look at that. 1 1/8 to 1 3/8 for doors not exceeding 75 pounds. So the bottom line is, in residential applications, that's a lot of weight for a door. You know, if you're going to do 2080 doors and, you know, or 2070, I suppose, 1 3/8, you might be at about, you know, let's say 16 square feet, you might be at about 5 pounds per square foot. Yeah, you're going to be right in that range, you know, is what you're going to be in. It is, you know, this material is made of steel. It's rated for 75 pounds. You know, just proceed accordingly. If you get into doors that are heavier than that, this is not technically the right hardware for you. This is designed for mullion or face frame mounting, and we'll illustrate that shortly. You've got to have, in your jamb construction, you've got to have basically a stop, or what they're calling a mullion. It would be a mullion if you had a bank of doors. If you had a pair of doors and you had a cased opening frame, you'll need a couple of jam strips or stop strips or stops. But if you had a bank of 4 doors, okay, 20202020, 8-foot wide open, well, probably a 10-foot wide opening, you're going to need a mullion strip between this pair, this one, and between this pair over here, right in the middle of the opening. You'll need a mullion strip. Suitable for floor-to-ceiling conditions, and that's where this hardware is used, because you can rock and roll this the entire height. And you will see material like this used in cabinetry as well. When you're building a large wardrobe cabinet apparatus, or this hardware will permit the door to open to 180 degrees. There's closed. You know, that's going to take you out to 90, and provided you don't have something that would otherwise obstruct it, you'll certainly go all the way to 180, and realistically a little bit past that. That's because this is an overlay application. Okay, if this was inset, and you know, you could use this as an inset if you really wanted to. You know, you're only going to be stopped by whatever the door is going to encounter in terms of, you know, a jam or a wall condition. So this will go to 180. Elongated screw holes for easy alignment. Yeah, everything on here will feature slotted holes. You're going to run your screws through the slotted holes and make your adjustment, or make your adjustment. And then once you know you're ready, you'll use these fixed holes. And screws, speaking of screws, or holes, screws are included in a complementary finish. These are going to be steel-based screws. Having some trouble with the camera. There we go. Steel-based screws in a polished brass finish. Mortised door leaves, that would be considered standard practice. We're going to illustrate that in the installation instructions. You don't have to mortise the door leaves if you don't want to, And their cross section, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't show them fully mortised at all. They might be mortised top and bottom. We don't know that, but they're certainly not fully mortised. Bushings at pivot point assure smooth, silent operation. Talking about this, that bushing that's there, sure, that's going to be smooth and silent. And again, they're non-handed. There is the only other information below. This is a number. I'd say that'd be a number 12 screw is what that is, by 1 inch long. Now let's take a look at the product catalog, and that will expose you to the other pivots from Stanley. So you'll want to review that. There might be a pivot set that's more appropriate for your application, and it's very likely you arrived at the 342 because you looked at the product catalog and determined that that was the correct one. You could forego a mullion or a stop strip and apply this material to a header applications, to a stop on a header alone. That would be your 340. We sell a lot more 340s than 342s. The 341 is a jam-mounted version, so if you don't have any sort of mullion or stop strip implemented at all, you might want to look at the 341. The 327 is a very common pivot because the 327 is the 342, with the exception is that it's made for heavier doors. Okay, if you need to go up to 1 3/4, after 1 3/8, you're looking at a 327 up to 150 pounds. That's going to handle, a 3080 1 3/4 solid core door at 6 pounds a foot or so. You're going to be right there. So you're going to be able to handle large door sizes with a 327. Okay, so the point is Stanley has the material for your application. Then of course the 342 that we've talked about. Now it is now time to move to the installation instructions. We're going to talk about how this material gets installed. I'm looking at it on one of my other screens here. You can see at the top that it defines overlay. How much your overlay is of the opening, that's can be set by you. I wouldn't say that there's any hard and fast rules about that. Typical construction might tell you 1 inch on either side. Nothing is defined regarding that. So the reason also, however, that it's overlay is because you then have a place by which to mount the backstrap portion, the mullion portion, or the face of your wall portion, whatever it might be. Now, moving to step 2 of the installation instructions. So in step 2, what they're saying is they want you to mark a vertical line on the mullion, whatever you're attaching this to, the face of the jamb, the wall, whatever it is. You're going to mark a line on that so that later in the installation instructions you have a visual area by which to line up your hardware. It's actually going to be this edge. Line up your hardware. So let's study what they say. It requires a reading through twice, I think. Horizontal positioning will vary. Horizontal positioning will vary with mullion width. A 1 inch wide mullion with mullion leaves centered horizontally is the minimum width recommended. What I take that is if you're going to have a 1 inch wide mullion, and you could have a wall, but if you've got a 1 inch wide mullion, you're going to center this on that 1 inch wide. Okay. We know that it's 7/8. That therefore you're going to mark a line a 1/16 of an inch over to give you the location of where you're going to place this. Okay, in relationship to the inside wall. Amount of overlay of the door will vary with mullion width and design requirements. A 15/16 overlay on the hinge side is minimum. Yeah, because they want a minimum of a 1/16 of an inch, and then you've got 7/8. So that's 15/16, right? It could be greater, but and it's not readily obvious right now, but you've got to draw those lines. Top and bottom, how far over from the inside of the jamb or the mullion to where this plate is going to be positioned. Okay. Now moving into step 3, mortise as shown on top and bottom of the door if minimum clearance is desired. And if you don't want to mortise them, you're going to end up having an approximate 5/16 of an inch clearance, okay, which is basically going to be from where your door sits down to where the bottom of the pivot's going to sit. Approximately 5/16, they're saying. Yeah, right on. I mean, it's right on at 5/16. So if you're going to mortise your door, you're going to be able to hang your clearance is going to go really down to just, the underside of the leaf to the bottom of the unit, which is about 3/16, which means your mortise is going to be the thickness of this material. I don't see where they're telling us how thick to drill to make the mortise or how deep to make it. I would make it, the thickness of that leaf naturally, which is the second best friend of the carpenter, right after the router, of course, is the caliper. My caliper tells me 0.129. 0.129, so just heavy on 1/8. They want you to do a 2.5 inch long mortise or wide mortise. Okay, we've already talked about that being 2.5. They want 1 inch wide on the face. You can see down here where the 1 inch is, right at the tip of my finger. Okay, going all the way through to the back of the door is what they want, and they do not indicate the back of the unit being mortised at all, nor would they. You could have that, but you probably don't. You know what? As I scrutinize this hinge, talking about whether or not you would mortise the back leg of the unit, I would be very tempted to want to mortise it because why? Your door is going to sit in here, okay? That dimension is going to be not insignificant, like 3/8 of an inch, okay? If you were to walk parallel to the wall, you'd be able to see right in that little corner back here, depending, you would. Also, when the door closes, that door is going to have to hyperextend just to get the door to rest flush to the condition. So I might be tempted to leave the reservation and determine if I could mortise this leg as well, so I could draw the door closer to the wall. Now, the reason they probably recommend that you don't is how many walls are utterly plumb. I'm sure every wall that professional carpenters, framing contractors put in are perfectly plumb, but they're probably not telling you to do that because they know from practice that you're going to want to have that little extra play. I might scrutinize that a little bit further and might leave the reservation in that regard and mortise this back leg as well. Moving to step 4. So you've got the door mortised top and bottom, okay? Moving to step 3. You need to chamfer the inside corner of the door, of the inside corner of your door, and that is so that, okay, 3/16 approximate chamfer on inside bottom and top of door to accommodate door leaf bend. The bottom line is this piece of steel started its life out as a piece of flat steel. They then put it into a press brake and they bent it. Now you'll notice what they're chamfering here is that because that's not a perfect 90-degree angle. That is a radius internal. That is a radius that's on the inside of that inside angle. So they're going to want you to chamfer that area, which chamfering is basically non-chamfered and then chamfered, non-chamfered, chamfered. So you could take a wood file and just break that edge, a little bit, however you're going to do it. That's what I would do. I would break that edge so that your door fits nice and tight inside of that angle. Well, I should say so that it sits flush here and to the side. Okay, that's why you're chamfering that. Now moving to step 4. Place door leaves in mortise, mark and pre-drill at center of elongated holes. Okay, so very simple. Top and bottom, you're going to place this into your mortise. You're going to mark the center of the elongated hole. That's all you're doing at this point. You're marking it. Step 5, to allow for vertical adjustment and sufficient clearance under the door, the bottom mullion leaf should be mounted at least a 1/4 inch off the floor. If carpet or other special floor coverings are used, additional clearance should be allowed equal to their thickness. Okay, so they want you to hang this, they want you to hold this off the floor, 1/4 inch minimum. Okay, why do they want you to do that? Well, how many walls are plumb? How many floors are level? That's the problem. You know, you're going to have a big door, it's going to swing out and all the way back, and if you don't have adequate room under the door, so that goes through its entire whatever opening and closing cycle without rubbing, making contact with the floor, then you've got trouble. If you're going to mortise that down, I suppose you could, if you really, really know that the floor is either perfectly level or actually goes away from that opening a little bit. You could certainly hold that down, but if it's going onto a tile floor or something that is an irregular surface, you're going to hold that off. So put a piece of 1/4 inch shim down there and rest your product, your pivot on top of that. Or if you're dealing with a carpet application, you know, whatever the thickness is that you need to build up, let's say, you know, I realize it's not the 1970s, but we all had, well, not all of us, oh my gosh. Some of us may have grown up with shag carpeting. That stuff can be epically thick. You're going to have to hold, you're going to have to add your shim thickness, a 1/4 inch plus whatever you know you got to get up and over so that your door can open and close without hitting the carpeting or whatever the irregularity in the floor would be. So place a shim down. Bottom of step 5, apply bottom hinge to face of mullion using the center of the elongated hole. Be sure to line up with previously drawn vertical line, and that's where that line comes in. Adjust this to where the line is, center of this hole. They want you to attach it at this point. Your shim is down, you're parallel to your line, a hole through the center, and fastened. Okay. Step 6. Position top hinge mullion leaf on mullion at a point from the bottom of the leaf, from top of bottom hinge, which is equal to door height less 5 5/8. Okay. So, assuming that you've mortised everything, top and bottom, you're basically going to position this from here, door height, net door height, less 5 5/8. Okay. If you have not mortised it, you're going to need to increase that dimension. Bear with me. So, when I said increase the dimension, the distance is going to be greater between the leaves. So rather than 5 5/8 less than door height, it'll be 5 5/16 less than door height, which will account for the fact that your hardware is surface mounted. Apply a screw in the center of the elongated hole in your top. Raise top hinge to uppermost position and temporarily tighten the screw. Okay, so you know where you're going to apply these two leaves in relationship to each other. Net door height minus the adjustment based on mortised or not mortised. You are parallel, you're plumb. Okay, I would sure have a plumb bob. They don't indicate having a plumb bob, but at some point you've got to make sure everything's level. Otherwise your door is, you know, if you're not plumb, your door might swing like this, or your door might swing like this, and not stay in a position without it creeping closed or creeping open. So make sure, I would definitely have a plumb bob involved in this, and obviously make an adjustment. Moving to step 7, you've got your hardware marginally attached to the mullion. This is where you're going to have, this is where it becomes a two-person job. The door's got to come in. I would be shimming the door so I could place it on the floor on top of my leaf, okay, without, making that hardware get pushed out of shape, and it's going to. I would get my door in here, but I would have it shimmed across here. I'd have a little block over here, and I'd have a block, obviously a block underneath here. At that point, I'm showing it here, but you're going to be doing it, of course, in the open position so that your door is in here. You'll mark through the center of that elongated hole, secure it. Okay. Step 7 tells us, open the door leaf to 180-degree position, locate bottom door mortise on bottom hinge door leaf, right? It's going to fit into the mortise you've created. Apply screw through elongated hole into the pre-drilled hole. In the same way, locate the top door mortise on top hinge door leaf by dropping top jam leaf. Apply screw into that pre-drilled hole. Okay, at this point you can very carefully test your operation. Hold up the door and cycle it. Make sure it moves where you want it to move. Once you know that it's good, you've got 4 holes and you've got 4 screws and elongated holes holding it. Make any adjustments. Vertically, laterally. Once you've got it positioned correctly and it's still in the shimmed condition, then obviously drill your final holes, attach, and you're done. Step 8 tells us make final door alignment if necessary by tapping leaves that have elongated holes, maybe a little rubber mallet, maybe some way to very easily just kind of manipulate what you need to do. If substantial horizontal adjustment is necessary, additional mortising of the door may be required. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you need to move that door so much, you've got a mortise down here that's the size of this. You might have to chop it out. You might have to mortise that greater than the 2.5 inch that they called. If you really needed to move that door out that way, you'll have to take it down and remortise it. Apply remaining screws, tighten all screws to complete the installation. There you go. This template, or these installation instructions, don't have a date on them, but I'll bet you they've not changed since 1970 something, is the bottom line. The name Stanley is synonymous with, I think people know them as Stanley is a company that has Stanley is an octopus with many tentacles. I think of them as a hinge company. Sure, pivots, certainly pivots, but I think of them as manufacturing, in my opinion, the highest quality commercial hinge available. I like their fit and finish better than everyone else's. You might think of Stanley as a tool company. Okay, you might think of Stanley as making sliding door hardware or commercial hardware. You might think of Stanley in terms of automatic doors. They get into all of these things. So they have lots of other associated product lines. Below this video is a link to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Stanley products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Stanley, part number 342, US3 is polished brass on a steel base. Well, this is steel. You can also order it in 26D satin chrome and US10B oil rubbed. It'll be stainless base material on all of those. Any questions on the Stanley 342 or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.